And welcome back. This is Alden Antonucci for another fun Extreme Power Hour podcast where I've got Rusty Bauer here, a good friend of mine that's got an awesome academy here in Bozeman, Montana. And I know we talked a little bit, about your academy and kind of that difference between public school system, kind of like in the box thinking versus out of the box thinking. And sometimes that doesn't have an age. We think of the adults need to teach the children. But sometimes it sounds like you're encouraging, no, the kids actually teach amongst themselves. And then you're just guiding them. Right?
Correct.
And you're not even calling them teachers. You're calling them guides.
You know, in fact, it's kind of weird, the teacher word. I'm just not a fan. When people say, hey, are you a teacher today? I'm like, nope. I'm guiding today.
I'm
I
guiding
say
today.
like it's fun because teaching kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But like guiding's fun because I don't have to be the Mr. Know-it-all guy. I'm just making sure everything's cool and everything's flowing in the direction we want it to.
There were some good points that you made. And I was almost thinking one of them was like, you know, when you're, let's call it investing into an academy, you're actually investing into your children's future.
Yeah, you're investing in your children's education if you choose to pull them from a public school where it's free and it's convenient and all that, but you know all the pain points and all the things that they come home and you're frustrated.
Right.
But invest in your kid's future. Like if you could, in our model, I mean, we are creating confident people. That's really what we're focusing on.
Right.
Imagine your kid at 18 years old just coming to you, or the conversations at the dinner table, even prior to that, like as they are going through the system, and you can just hear their thoughts and, you know, and just the way they think. And it's different now. They're passionate about life. They're curious about life. They're sharing things, you know?
Right.
And then by high school in this Acton Academy model that we are, I don't know if you mentioned the school name. I started the Bozeman Innovation Academy here in Bozeman, but, even at 18, you know, imagine your kid a solid, confident person, right? That's ready to take on life, whether it's not your plan as a parent, it's their plan, right?
Right.
Like there's lots of stories about, here's a quick one. A father, you know, a father and a son were in the Acton Academy. Well, the son was. The father had all these ambitions to be a baseball player, right? And he wanted to play baseball and he wanted his son to play baseball. But as his son's growing up through this Acton model and he's discovering himself, he really found the interest in film. And he's like, Dad, I don't want to play baseball anymore. I want to pursue this film, you know, avenue. And the dad was hurt, right? Because as a parent, you got all these dreams for your kid, but really they're your own dreams.
Right.
You know?
You're just,
your dreams are getting crushed
through your children.
Right. But, you know, with respect to the dad, he looked at his son and said, well, cool. I want to do this with you. And I don't know the movie, but the father and son a couple of years ago directed their first movie together, you know?
Wow.
I'm like, how cool is that?
Right.
Those are the like confident, whole people that are driven and do cool things in this world.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads me into my next point that I was just thinking about, like you were talking about, is almost there's like an abundance there. Like you almost need to manifest it. Right. And so at this level, like what they were doing is, you know what, Dad, I'm not going to follow your path. I'm manifesting this other path.
Right.
Instead of the dad fighting against it, he worked with it, and then they made something magical.
Right. And think about that father-son relationship for the rest of their life. You know?
Right. And so do you kind of instill that into your students as well? Those kind of philosophies and thinking? Yeah,
I do. You know, and when they're 9 and 10 years old, it's kind of hard to think that way. When you tell them, you know, we're really trying to inspire you to become the best person you can and finding yourself. What the Acton Academy mission really is to inspire everybody who comes through our doors to find a calling and make a positive change in this world. Right. Everybody, not just the kids, because we got to talk about the hero's journey too, if you know much about that, but it's huge in the Acton Academy. It's a big part of it, but parents are also on their own journey as well. When you put them in a model where their kids now are changing the way they think, they're becoming more onerous. You know what I mean?
I think of it as they're willingly doing the dishes instead of being forced to do the dishes.
Right. Yeah.
And they see the benefits of, okay, if I do the dishes, I can go do something else instead of wanting to do something else than being forced to come back to the dishes. It's almost a reverse psychology.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. And I think that almost plays into body, mind, spirit, almost that metaphysical where, you know what, if we go with what naturally happens in nature it's going to be a lot less resistant.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we go against it, which in this sense, in the schooling system, we're almost going against what nature just dictates for
Right.
us. Right. Where sometimes you just got to do it the hard way. We can't just be doing it the easy way every time and expecting, results, or expecting our children to morph into these amazing adults when you know what? They were never really taught how to become that, or never were gone through the refiner's fire,
Right.
the practices.
Right.
Yeah. And so, yeah.
Well, and then how do you know if you're going with it or against it? I mean, just because you are on the same plan together doesn't mean necessarily, I mean, you are moving in the same direction together, but it might still be a fight, and that's where the mind, body, spirit, I feel like the moment of now, it's really your emotion, I feel like, right? Because I take that story of the baseball player dad, right? Like at first he's upset, that's going against it, I feel. But you need that. That's life. You have to have this, like, I know what I don't want, so I know what I do want thing. And that's just how life works. So I picture going against it. He might have been like, no, that's dumb. Who knows what he's saying to his kid? He's probably initially trying to talk his kid out of it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then, at some point the dad realized, like, well, this is my son. This is what he wants to do. He's his own individual. I'm going to go with it. And that's got to feel way better,
Right.
That's going with it. And I feel like manifesting things, it's about, if it feels good, you're in the right direction. You know?
And do you feel like there is a connection between that spiritual realm and the physical realm?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Kind of tap into?
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts?
Well,
on
everything is manifestation. I mean, this is a manifestation, like, I didn't know that we'd be doing this not too long ago. And here we are, right? And like, how cool is this? And that's how life is. I've always wanted to be on a podcast.
Right.
And I'm in Bozeman here in a podcast, talking to Alden here. And how cool is that?
Never mind, your son's name is Alden.
Yeah, my son's name is
amazing name, by the way.
It is weird to say your son's name to another guy. And it's kind of like, there's this a little weird thing there, but it's cool. But yeah, I mean, it's all manifesting. And I don't know if you saw this happening, but here we are, because we had like interests. We were thinking about it, and, it's coming. The spiritual side, I mean, it's through inspiration, isn't it? Like, you get inspired to do something. Why did I talk to you? Why did you say hi? You know what I mean? Or why did I go do that? Like, there's so many things going on in our life that we don't know,
right?
But if you believe, you're just going with the flow and you're not fighting anything. Stuff manifests, things happen,
right?
And it's usually in the path you want to go,
And are you a man of faith?
To be honest, I don't have like a denomination, if you will. I've never really been to church.
Right.
It wasn't until probably like 2015, 16, when I started to really listen to people on YouTube talking about controlling your life, how everything's mental, right? How it's all paradigm shifts and all this stuff. So I started thinking about that a lot. And when I was a public educator, I was hating it. Talk about going against what you want to do. God, I was hating it. I was coming home and my wife was mad because I was at another event, and I'm only getting paid minimal,
Right.
I'm just hating it. But I tell you what, when I had that realization that I did not want to be a principal anymore, and I didn't even tell my wife yet, actually, I felt bliss.
Was it not being a principal, or you just want to remove yourself from that system, that cog? You were sick of being that cog in the wheel.
Yeah. I was sick of being a cog.
Yeah.
I wanted to get out of the public ed system. You bet.
Yeah.
Just wasn't a fit for me.
Which is sad, because you were someone in your personality and everything else, and a teacher that's very well liked.
Yeah.
Should be what the public system should attract.
Yeah. Let's keep this guy.
Let's keep this guy.
Let's feed off of his positivity. Why do kids like this person?
Right.
Let's model that.
Right. Exactly.
But no, you go to the principal and say, I want to do this. Can I get this for my classroom, or can I take him there? And it's like, oh, sorry, we don't have the budget for that. And you're like, well,
right. Well, like they say, Rothschild said, give me control of the school system, and I will give you not thinkers, but I will give you workers. So that's what it was all about. He wanted workers, not thinkers. Right. And so the ones that went to these private schools, these academies, these elite, right, were the ones that had that step above that school system. So these schools provided the business owners. These kids that just went to public schools worked for these people. And that was that kind of segregation that we're still we have today.
Yeah.
You know, people talk about black and white all day, but they never talk about the segregation within the economical standpoint.
Totally.
And knowledge normally, or gnosis, is one of those standpoints. And that gnosis kind of is the blending of the euphoric, you know, spiritual world with the physical world.
Yeah.
Because we know there's that blend of the two.
Absolutely.
Well, if you can have control of one over the other, then that's what's called power, right? So then they're just power hungry at that point.
Totally.
And so, like we were talking before, you know, in the early 1900s, that was the schooling system we are still providing today.
Right.
Our social, you know, social societies, social welfare system, it's all designed back in the early 1900s. And we're wondering
It goes
why.
further than that, though.
Right. It's like, why?
It's back in Sparta.
Right.
I mean, they were creating warriors. So you created a warrior school and it looked just like these schools, you know, in the sense that you are just, they're just under command and you're sifting out the top dogs. And then I don't know what they did with the other ones. You
multi-tier
know what I mean?
system. And you stay there. Don't come out of your hole. Right. You live on that side of the road.
And the other story I've heard is like, you know, Rockefeller back in the day, you know, with the whole industrial revolution side of things,
right,
was a big component in creating the standardized system.
Right.
And what they were trying to do was find managers, you know, versus the workers. So
that was Rockefeller working with Rothschild right there and say, how do we make this happen?
Yeah. And we'll just get the cream of the crop that got the best grades, that listened, did what they're supposed to do. There are managers, is the ones we want. And the rest of you, you know.
Yeah, you're going to work for the managers.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah, no, very cool. And you know, every day I see that happening more and more, but also what I see is people are starting to wake up to it.
Yeah.
Just like your academy, it is small, it's in that growing sensation, but I bet overnight, bam, you're going to get that, you know, that
can't wait for that.
Yeah, I can't wait for that growth.
But it will. I agree with you.
Exactly. You know, and
that's manifesting too, isn't it? Because I see it coming.
Well, people look in your eyes and you're selling what, even though you're not personally teaching the kids every day.
Right.
But at the same time, those parents are looking to you. You're looking at their kids and you know you have their best interests at heart.
You want to know the greatest feeling? Realizing how much trust and confidence the parents of my students have in me.
Right.
Because it's just me right now.
Right.
I do have another lady I just hired as a guide, but it's just me, you know, and they have faith in dropping their kid off there and picking them up. And, you know, I think that that's amazing, because we're doing something different, but they believe in the mission too. You know, they believe in the whole empowering my child, you know, and so I'm going to trust you that this is what's going to happen, you know. I love it. It's a huge responsibility, you know.
Do you think there's like a spiritual connection even before you came here on the earth that almost led you to this mission? Do you not feel like you're on a mission?
I do feel like I'm on a mission. Even as a young kid, I was always I think the people that think outside the box are on a mission, because evolution of any species of life, you have to have the edge pushers, right? You have to have the kid who walks on the left side of the hall instead of the right side of the hall. You have to, even though you may not like that kid. But it makes you question the rules we have. That's how we move forward. Because if we're all sheep and we're all just doing the same thing, how do we evolve? You know? So evolution is very spiritual, you know? Why are babies being born now? I heard that we got like extra blood veins in our wrists now. Kids are coming out. They're finding out like extra blood veins because we're typing more. Like our society is changing and the physiology of even, you know, our children are changing.
Right.
I guess our DNA's changed, you know.
Right.
According to like Dolores Cannon, if you hear that, like
epigenetics and stuff like that. Yeah.
It's changing. You know, there's this evolution. You know, and as human beings, we think that this is it, you know. But it's a snow globe. I mean, we're in this little globe and we think this is it.
This
you know?
is it.
People are watching that globe, man. Like there's so much going on, you know.
Right. Oh man, that's going down a whole nother rabbit hole.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. You know? And so I think almost that disclosure is actually happening right now. I think more and more. And if we could say they're controlling the narrative, right? And so when they're controlling the narrative, then you know something's happening.
They being
let's just say the powers that be. The same
human powers that be, or the metaphysical powers that be.
Exactly. So there's multiple levels, right? There's multiple tiers, just as if there's so many grades that are in a high school or whatever else. There's also tiered here. and, you know, technologies that are hundreds of years more advanced than what we are right now.
Oh yeah.
You know, in my personal opinion, they've got an iPhone 352 and a half, you know, and they're like, here, we got number 21 coming out, you know, but in reality, they got that one.
Oh yeah.
And they're like, how can we market this? But it really comes down to that, just like we were talking about, starts with the schooling system. The schooling system is literally putting people in boxes, and they're containing and controlling that knowledge. And then they're just dripping it out, and they're controlling that drip.
Right.
And they'll say, well, enough drip over here. Let's get a little stream going over here, because these are the ones really paying for it, and these are the ones that we want running the show, you know, hey, you know, give the scraps over here.
Yeah.
And so I feel, you know, that's where knowledge really is. I personally feel like 0 point energy, that was something they had back during the time of the pyramids. You know, you bring any kids, it doesn't matter how old they are, even including myself. If you classify myself as a kid and I'm almost 40 years old, you bring us to the pyramid and you say, you know what? There's as much dirt as you want out there. Go ahead and build this pyramid.
Yeah, right.
Could we even do that really today?
I don't think so. Man, well, we'd have to bring in all that. Well, we'd bring in all this technology and stuff that they didn't have then.
They didn't have then.
They had manpower.
Right.
And help. Right.
But even with manpower, if they were size of us, and you're definitely a lot bigger and stronger than I am, you know, how many of yous would it require to move 150? That's a small 150 ton block.
Right.
That's a small block.
Right.
There's 2.5 million.
And I get that roughly. Wheels and ramps and physics and things are going to help you. But still,
in theory, they were like, we don't even know if they really had the wheel. It was like, well, they just rolled them on logs. Well, that's a wheel, right? But how many logs can you put under a 500 ton block? You couldn't. They've actually done the experiments. They've tried putting logs under every part of that 500 ton block. They slowly drop the crane and the block on the wood that they might have found at that point. Guess what it did to those logs?
Crushed it.
The second it moved, they went. Yeah, they were like a toothpick, and you just went.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so now you're saying they put thousands and thousands of people of your size, my size, slaves at that point. Were slaves really getting fed well? You know what I mean? So that's
right.
Were they drinking a lot? Were they eating their protein shakes?
Yep, right.
You know, you're like, get back on there, Jimmy. You know, and they got 1,500 guys with whips.
Well, whips might give you some motivation. I don't know.
Right, but you only got to pull that block about 400 to 600 miles. Some of them were as close as 100 miles. Right.
And then they go up.
Then they're like, well, they floated them. Okay. Well, I mean, you've seen the schooling system. Do they teach those kind of concepts in school?
Floating blocks?
Well, just pyramid building, kind of thinking outside the box.
No, I haven't seen that.
You haven't seen that. And I don't even think they have that in college. They would say you got to get a bigger crane.
I'll tell you, the only time that I've heard the word pyramid in education in my mind is teaching geometry class. That's about it.
Right.
I can tell you the volume of a pyramid, you know?
Right. And I think back in the day, I mean, what their reference point was called polymath, which is obviously the study of multiple things, right? And being a master and perfectionist of multiple studies, instead of just like, you know what, you're going to be an English teacher,
right? And
you're going to major and have a degree as an English teacher. Yes, you know how to do your simple math and everything else.
Right.
But at the same time, it almost took the fun out of learning, because English, let's just put that's just one of the concepts. And once you learn and you're passionate about something, it doesn't matter what subject you choose.
Absolutely.
You're going to be passionate about that one thing.
Right.
And so that's why what I like with your style of teaching, there was a word that you brought up before, and it was called apprentice.
Yeah, apprenticeships.
Man, I can feel that.
Oh, man, yeah. Well, imagine this. I mean, imagine elementary kids figuring out, again, how to learn independently, know that I can teach myself something, and I learned it.
Right.
That means I can learn anything. I can teach myself anything if I believe that, and that's what we're doing.
Going back to the internet, if you know how to open up the browser and you're passionate about singing, you can go to an app for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And then you can start excelling on that.
Yep.
And so that apprenticeship that you were kind of describing to me, which is awesome, we can actually not only find an apprenticeship, you know, through your academy,
right?
But kids can now find apprenticeships through schooling system, and then they have good heroes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And people to look up to, and it's hard
to get coaches and champions, whatever you want to call them, people who are supporting that child in whatever mission or path that they want to go.
Yeah.
And the apprenticeships in our model, in the Acton Academy model, really starts in middle school. Although in elementary, we're always talking to kids about what they're interested in.
Right.
And they don't have a lot of life experience at that time. Cool thing about our model in elementary is we have sessions, and every session has a theme.
Yeah.
So we had like coding and robotics. We had detective science. Right now we're in community garden. So there's all these different like areas of life. And really I look at it as it's giving kids experience in things that they might be interested in. Right. So in middle school is where the apprenticeships really come into play.
Yeah.
So in an Acton Academy, every middle schooler has to get themselves an apprenticeship. That's the other cool thing. Like we give the emails and we give the recipes and we give, we'll practice with them and stuff, but it's up to that person to make the emails, to make the phone calls, to take 20 no's and still be looking for that yes.
Right.
And how cool is that? What, 12 and 13 years old? I mean, look at today. Kids are 18 and they leave school just wanting to party or something. They don't really know what they want to do in life.
They want to go to the next schooling system that will.
They want freedom, right? Because they haven't had freedom.
Right.
College is a taste of freedom, right?
Right.
You watch all the movies. I loved American Pie, like the movie it's just, you think that college is this fun, free time,
Right.
And yeah, but that's just because they haven't been free before. But you imagine, like, again, 12, 13-year-olds who find something, and even finding what they don't like, isn't that just a good lesson too?
Just as
like, I thought that was cool, but I don't really want to go there.
Right.
Now I want to go here, and let's figure that out early. And then by high school, when we call it, they have to go on what we call an NGA, their next grade adventure. So by high school, now they're actually like doing something, starting a business for themselves. If you want to be an engineer, let's crush the college courses now, right? Like, let's plug you in with engineers. Let's get you up to the university. Let's get you engineering at high school. So when you graduate at 18, you've got 10 job offers already at your door.
Right.
You're not finding yourself anymore. You're doing it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I see the empowerment side.
Sure.
You're just empowering children at that point to when they become an adult, they've far surpassed anyone that's going to be in that age group.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So they're graduating, let's say around 17, 18 years old, which would be standard.
Yeah.
They're probably already getting a qualified job that maybe even a 30-year-old might have because they got the experience behind their belt.
Right.
They're motivated. They're young. They're driven. They don't have anything that's going to hold them back to just excel.
Right. One of my favorite lines from the owner, the founder of the Acton Academy, his name is Jeff Sandifer. And he made a comment in all of his businesses that he has, he would 100% hire any of his middle schoolers at their Acton Academy versus any adult that's going to walk in the door.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
Wow. That's
really empowering to me. I want to see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe that's what the transition that we're going to eventually see might be that, because I'm seeing like my children, for example, they come home and they're using that. They're like, Dad, you want me to show you how to do that on your computer? And I see we're kind of getting into like, they want to call it more of a transhumanism phase where we're in right now. It's called Agenda 2032, if you've ever heard of that.
I haven't heard that.
So it's called transhumanism. So you got your wearables. So you got your watches, you got your ear pods, you got everything that are called wearables, right?
Sure.
And those are obviously technology based, right? And it's all linked back to the phone. And then the phone is obviously linked back to the system.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, you get some other conspiratorial stuff like 5G and all this other things of like, oh, what's happening right now? And Neuralink, right? So Neuralink is like, you know what? We don't need students anymore. Just go ahead and put this on your head. Because right now they're doing the implant aspect of it, which is obviously going to graduate into, it's just going to be another wearable, right? And so they're getting us to kind of adopt this evolution that you were talking about before. Right. If you want to learn a language, it's going to be downloaded.
Sure.
You know what I mean? As you're walking into the door to speak Chinese, boom, you open that door and you're already there, right? It might have your accent to it, but that knowledge base, it's kind of interesting to think too. It's just, if you look at your hand right now, right? And you start thinking about it and you're like, what's actually moving my hand right now?
Right.
And you say, well, my brain is. Okay, but can you dial in your head and say, is there some other force up there that's telling my brain to move my hand, right? And so it's that same kind of concept of, let's call it consciousness,
right? Consciousness,
or the unified field, ether, you know, right up until the new schooling system. Ether was considered just as one of the elements, right? And with the current schooling system, they actually removed that word, that unified field, the ether, because ether
created curiosity,
right? Because that created that bridge, that 3-realm bridge.
That there's an unknown still.
There's an unknown, but
not a nothing. Nothing is a bad thing.
Something here,
yeah,
right? So this is where it gets into multidimensional and out of the box thinking, and obviously you're one of those out of the box thinkers, you know. And so when you start really conceptualizing the brain, the heart, and you start looking more about like chakras and energy and the stuff that correlates into maybe a higher purpose, higher self, right?
Right.
And so the worst thing that you can kind of do with people is to remove the sense of purpose. Yeah. If you empower people that, you know, especially at children level, say, you know what, you're going to be the best engineer ever. And they're going to say, why? Well, that engineer that you really look up to, he started becoming an engineer at 25.
Right.
You're 12.
Yeah.
And he's saying you are better than he was at that point in time. How empowering is that to a child?
Oh, man.
You just gave him steroids at that point to be the best engineer in the world.
Right.
Right. And so if we look back into that, you know, the ancients and times, going back to the pyramids, kind of rewinding back there, and we're like, you know what? They made statues, they made buildings, they were passionate.
Right.
They not only did that and were good at that one thing, but that one person like Michelangelo, how many things was he good at?
Yeah, a lot.
He was one of the true studiers of the polymath and bringing that alive. Socrates, all these Archimedes and all these guys that were just, we still talk about today. Why are we talking about those guys today?
Yeah, where's the new guys at?
Where's the
I mean, we got Elon Musk, right? You know, we can talk about Elon Musk.
The Michael Jordans of the NBA, right? We can talk about the latest and greatest. But once they're gone, there's somebody else to replace them. And that's just in that specified thing, right? Michelangelo about helicopters, right? We could talk about airplanes. We could talk about Nikola Tesla, right?
Right, sure.
Where obviously we got AC power. He introduced so many things. We have cell phones. We have obviously multiple technologies, alternators on cars.
Right.
We have Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, all this from a man that, you know where he said he got his inspiration from? He got
his naps.
He got it from the universe.
Yeah.
Never mind the naps.
Well, Einstein would take naps.
And he would tap into that unified field, that ether.
Right.
And that's what they always said. And, you know, in modern day, we say, hey, you know, the kids are like, wow, you know, Nikola Tesla, you just hear a paragraph. I mean, you're in the schooling system. How much do they actually talk about Nikola Tesla?
Maybe Edison stole his stuff or something, right? But that's about it.
He was smart.
He was another guy working on it, but that's about it.
Right. They almost kind of like discredit him at that point, right? They said, well, we would have figured out it wasn't for him, but he kind of came up with it. So let's roll with it.
Yeah.
Well, diving into that, what Tesla was saying with the napping situation, maybe going to deep here,
but like Einstein or something.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I understand is, I mean, we're like radios, right? It's receiving and it's transmitting. And so when we're conscious, we're out living life and we're talking and we're doing things, our brain is just, right? It's just constantly emitting
signals.
And we're focusing. When we focus on something, that's really the power right there. Our focus is the most important thing, really, I think, in the universe, because it directs the power and it's emitting it out to the universe. The universe says, okay, here's what you're emitting and I'm going to give it back to you, because that's just the nature of, it's like a radio. You turn it on 96.7, you get the music, right? You don't turn it on 93.7 and be like, oh, where the heck's 96.7 at? You know, like, I don't get it. There? What's going on? You know, set the tuner and you start to receive what you're asking for. And that's really where it's all coming from, you know?
There's a bandwidth.
There's a bandwidth
to tap into.
So naps and things like that, you know, if you can quiet your mind, this is why meditation is becoming bigger too. A lot of people fight it, you know, it's this weird Eastern thing or something, you know, I don't know, but meditation is like one of the greatest things in the world because you can calm your mind. You're not thinking about anything, and therefore, where's your tuner at?
Right.
And we're like natural corks, right? Like if we quit thinking of stuff that's holding us down, we'll just naturally float up, right? We'll naturally connect to the ether, to whatever you want to call it, or inner being, or God, or whatever word you want to choose. And I feel like that's where they tap in. Tesla, Einstein, they were on a mission.
Right.
So when they quiet their mind, they receive what they're asking for.
Almost like a download.
It's like a download.
That's what Nicholas Tesla, he's like, listen, I didn't come up with any of this stuff. I'm reinventing what was already given to me.
Yeah. The Wright brothers, they didn't invent flying.
Right.
The physics, everything was there. They just tapped into it and they learned how to fly.
Right.
They figured it out.
Never mind there's pictures of airplanes on the pyramid, but that's a different discussion, right?
Yeah.
But
we'll give it to the Wright brothers, huh? They're American.
They're American. I know, my wife's Brazilian, and there's still kind of a conflict. If you literally go to Brazil and they say, they invented flying, and then you come to America, and then there's this whole quarrel because that's the first thing that they ever when you get to Brazil and they know you're American, they're like, who invented flying? And I'm like, oh, Brazil, of course. They're like, okay, you can stay. It's like your initiation into the Brazilian culture. Like he agrees that Brazil was the first one to fly.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
If I go down there, I'll make sure.
Now you know. If you don't want to get mugged, you're like, hey, you guys invented the plane. Okay, here's your purse back.
Right. But that's that. We're getting taught that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think what you're talking about before, taking things and these people who are controlling education or controlling the way we think. That's what we think, So, go ahead.
So if we're going back to that thinking concept, right? And you're talking about the napping, and here's a little, because some people are like, well, it's getting a little too woo-woo, a little too metaphysical there, and tapping into an ether of something I can't see.
Sure.
Well, can you see Wi-Fi on your phone? And how much can you download on your phone?
Yeah.
Right. Can you not do this and do that, and you're not seeing it, right? So there's got to be some room of faith.
Sure.
Knowing that I'm going to turn my phone on, and that radio tower over there is going to work, and it's going to send me the data so I can check out on Google or watch YouTube or whatever. Right. So there's that leap of faith that we take for granted.
Yeah.
And I feel like we live in a world now that's for granted. So we stop looking with our spiritual eyes because everything is in the here, the now. My download speeds and now 0.01 seconds. Right. Before it was about 1.3 seconds, and we were almost getting bored in between that time. So this
remember dial up?
Oh my gosh, I can hear it when you said that. It was like you sound like a fax machine, and you're like,
you're watching that image, like, and you're like, yeah, baby, come on,
with your popcorn. You're just like, oh, there's a picture. That's amazing.
Right.
And it's in color. That's a whole nother thing, and that's an evolution too. Is when things transitioned from black and white to color, the world really changed. Have you seen that evolution of black and white? Really? If we're talking about the timeline,
movies and things
between
like that.
1940 and 1960, I think, and after 1960 or mid 60s, kind of that Vietnam era, we transitioned into color.
Right.
And you can actually see on a spectrum of like the evolution of technologies. And,
interesting.
For people being happy and having babies and families, and that fertile what's it called, the boomer population. Right. And maybe you're kind of the tail end of that boomer population, I would say, probably, right?
I remember like Nick at Night or something, or not Nick at Night. That's a kid thing, I think. But yeah.
Right.
Those black and white shows coming on, and I'd watch them. But I remember in my memory of those, it's the wife is a stay at home.
Right.
Supports her husband, feeding him, keeping a clean house. The husband's just the man that works. And, all those values seem to be the same in black and white.
Women were women.
Yep. And they had the big dresses, and they were modest, and
and so we're seeing that transition, some good, some bad. And one of the things that we're really noticing now is, like you're kind of mentioning, the arms are even different.
Yeah.
Right? And they're getting more blood vessels because maybe we're using.
Yeah. Like our physiology is evolving.
So if we take that back to our brain is a sponge. I mean, better than anyone else. You tell a kid, just like this, exactly what you're going to get, know? And I think between 0 and 8, they say is what that person's going to be between the first 8 years of life, roughly. Right.
Right.
And so it's so crucial, especially in these lower years, to really give them what they need, give them the nutrients, give them everything that they need.
Sure.
And you start giving them toxins, obviously, you know what you're going to get. You start feeding them toxins, like, wow, they're going to be sick the rest of their life. And it's not going to stop at that point. And so it's kind of a movement that's happening right now is people are starting to transition to say, you know what? GMOs really aren't very good for us.
Right.
People don't know what that means, you know, genetically modified, right? And so soybeans were kind of the first things. And now everything is copyrighted. And so if you can GMO that soybean, only they can use that soybean. And that's so, you know, so now you have a copyright and a monopoly on everything, right? Bananas. I don't know if you've ever seen a banana with actual seeds in it. They're huge. And we eat bananas at the grocery store, right? And it even says organic on it.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing organic about it. Reality, because the organic, they've kind of changed the rules where in reality, the organic only means because it's kind of using different fertilizer products or more natural aspects of it. But the banana itself is actually still a GMO banana, right? Same with avocados. I mean, there's almost
watermelons,
almost nothing that you can't find now that isn't just incorporated, right? Just as we are incorporated. And when we get part of that schooling system, that's what's so fun about intriguing about talking about the schooling system. When a child is born, they're given a birth certificate, right?
Yeah.
And then that birth certificate has the name of the state you were born in, right?
Right.
And that's in big letters. And notice how you're in all caps and small letters, everything down below.
True.
So technically, you now are pair renting. You're actually renting your child from the state. The state actually, you're giving up the rights of your child to the state, and then you become a pair renting with them.
Pair renting. I got you now.
Pair renting. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy.
Yeah, where they're actually top tier and you're secondary. That's why the state can take your child.
Makes sense.
It's crazy.
Funny. Well, not funny, but
well, yeah, I know, but it's amazing because that's the same system that we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's kind of destroyed. The same system that was developed in the early 1900s or before that, we're still enacting today.
You're right.
Every time we have a child, we're literally giving that child to the state. Crazy to think about. Right. And then we're going to pair rent them and take them back. And in honor of you doing that, they're like, we're going to give you a tax discount.
Yeah.
But in reality, they own the child. And so when you get a marriage certificate, it's the same thing. That's where the marriage certificate is so important because now it pulls man and woman together and you're now as one.
Right.
And then when you get a divorce, well, guess what? You have to pay your dues to them because technically they're the ones that married you together, you know?
Right.
So this is part of that whole system.
Oh, I didn't even think of that.
That goes back to the Federal Reserve System back in 1913 on the Jekyll Island. Right, where you have the Rothschilds, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, the whole Titanic conspiracy, where the 6 people that were against the whole world banking system that we have today, they accidentally died on the Titanic. J.P. Morgan took all that money that got from the insurance. Well, guess what? Started the new banking system.
Wow.
And now we have what we consider, you know, the Rothschild banking system, which oddly enough means red shield. Well, who are they trying to shield? And maybe that's a different podcast to go down, but at the same time, we know that there is a system in place. And when somebody's born into that system, whether they know it or not, they're just like that new transhumanism phase that we're in right now. They just become another, Pink Floyd would say, another brick in the wall.
Right.
Right. And so that's where.
How can you have pudding if you don't eat your meat?
There you go. Right? Pink Floyd all day long.
Oh, man.
And what's great about Pink Floyd, too, is they have pyramids. You ever see the cover of a shirt?
You're right.
Pink Floyd has a pyramid. And guess what? Clear light comes through. And then what comes through on the other side is the spectrum. And so what's really cool about the spectrum, just like Jesus would say, or Yeshua, right? The ones that really know about the Bible will say, well, his name, if you call Jesus, he'd be like, who are you talking about? Like Yeshua. He's like, yeah, I'm right here, you know? And so he always said, he who hath an ear, lend an ear, right? So everything is written in code. And then everything's in spectrums, right? In spectrums being our eyes, with eyes to see and ears to hear, right? And so this gets into kind of that, it's called gnosis, right? And so that gnosis aspect is kind of like hidden knowledge.
Sure.
Not necessarily it's hidden, but it's only hidden to those that don't have the eyes to see and ears to hear.
Sure.
So now we're talking about phonetics, right? And we're talking about the eyes because they're not visualizing certain spectrums, just like the pyramid that's on Pink Floyd, another brick in the wall, right? And so our eyes only process not even 2% of visible light. Our eyes don't process 2%.
Yeah, you look at the electromagnetic spectrum and we only see this much of the,
this little chunk, and we think, you know what, this is our reality. You put
all that's there.
If you go at 2%, you're looking through this. You're like, this is the only thing that exists.
Right.
And we say this 98% doesn't exist.
Right.
Because these are not materializing, right? Going back to that simple concept like you were talking about, we're walking, talking antennas, and we're receiving and transmitting, right?
Right.
And if we want to kind of dig into the scriptures, that's in Eastern philosophy a little bit, that's called the Merkaba, right?
Okay.
We're walking through a vehicle of light. And we always try to say, well, the spirit's within us. In reality, we're actually inside of the spirit.
Right.
So we have a Merkaba, right? And so it goes from about your chest level and it goes about 3 or 4 feet below your feet. And if you imagine like a downward, as above, so below. So you have this triangle that points down below your feet, probably about 5 feet, and it comes up to about here. And then you got another one that crosses over about your knees, and then it points up to about 5 or 6 feet. And that's called more of the crown.
Sure.
Right?
Okay.
And so that's called, getting more into that spectrum, right? Well, we know the cell phone works, right? We know our body works. We know there's an antenna somewhere for a cell phone. Where's the antenna for our body? Same thing, right? And so if you can imagine, like we're walking, talking, and we've got this almost cell phone Wi-Fi connection, which is the easiest way to really think about it. We have to think about where is the source of that Wi-Fi connection, right? And you were saying this world's kind of like a dome, like a globe.
Yeah, like a snow globe.
Like a snow globe, right? Well, imagine all these little strings that we can't see with these eyes.
Sure.
Because we know the cell phone works.
Right.
But for some reason, the data goes back and forth with my phone. I ain't seen it, but I know it works. Well, I know my head's working because I'm interfacing within the program, right? Inside of that snow globe.
Right.
And so there's not really true answers to be held in this podcast about this, but there's some intriguing questions. And what I love about with what your academy is saying, hey, ask those questions.
Right.
That's okay. You're not weird to think outside the box, and just because you're having those thoughts, feelings, and questions, you're not different. If anything, you're above normal that we would classify, right?
I think we all have those questions, but we don't say them.
Right.
We don't want to seem
like,
weird.
Oh, we're going to be weird.
I had this weird thought. People are like, yeah, you're weird.
I feel like an actor in a game. It's like a video game that we're in, right? It's like the Matrix is almost a documentary,
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing talking about education, it's interesting because kids are really just measured amongst themselves. You know what I mean? That's what the grades are. You got a better grade than me, you must be smarter than me, know? And so you just have all these people who, through the conditioning of school, feel low about themselves. Like you talk about tuning and what are you projecting onto the universe? If you feel like you're not the smartest person or you're dumb or you just don't get math or whatever, that's what you're manifesting in your life. And I feel like life is really that simple. We just don't know. It's so simple we don't know it. You know what I mean?
If you say my life sucks, a simple explanation, my life sucks, you're going to believe that. Be careful what you say.
Yeah. The universe says, okay, here you go.
Because when you're spelling and you're spelling out stuff, you're actually casting spells.
Yeah,
so we have to be careful on the spells that we cast upon ourselves.
Totally.
And upon others. And that's where it goes into like Jesus was talking about, Yeshua, saying ears to hear. We got to be careful of what's coming out of our mouth because it's going into our ears. And spirit and the real you inside of you doesn't know the difference between, it doesn't have sarcasm.
Right.
Doesn't have sarcasm. We have sarcasm here and we can joke and play, but in reality, some of the people that have the most sarcastic responses are actually the ones that are most wounded inside.
Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like going back into self-reflection.
Sarcasm can show I'm smart, but I don't really know what I'm talking about.
Right. Right. Fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
Concept,
right. But don't question me too much because then I'm going to go violent on you or something because I don't know what else to do.
Exactly. So, in this world, it's, I feel like it's a moving target for sure.
Yeah. you know, you talk about this movement, and empowerment is just, I like that word a lot. I think that is our movement, you know. Growing up as a kid, you know, think about it. You come to this world and you can't even move. You can't even like move your head.
This
you know?
avatar body they call a body, right? It's more of an avatar, and you're like, I don't even know how to use this thing yet. I don't even know how to look.
But the mind is super active, and it's just absorbing, you know. And you don't teach your kid how to walk. All of a sudden they just they pop up, and then they just start going. But they've been trying and trying, you know. But we're not teaching these kids anything, you know. But what we are teaching them is how life is, you know. So when they're in a house where parents are fighting all the time, or you have an alcoholic parent, for example, or it's a really crappy life, imagine what that kid is absorbing and taking into their own, you know, what they call reality, you know. And therefore, that's what they tune and admit. And they just, if you don't think outside the box, or you don't think larger than what reality's showing you, you're going to get stuck in it, you know. And I feel like that's what we have created. We just have these people, they are raised in houses, they go to school. In school, they're taught what to think and do all the time, and it's sheep mentality, you know. But where is the opportunity for these kids to be thinking outside the box and really thinking? We all do it in our own, when we're solo, you know what I mean? But where is that? Where's that influence? Why can't we influence people to be the best that they can be? You know what I mean? That life doesn't have to be like this. In fact, you can change your life, you know? And it's all here.
You're one thought away from being where you want to be. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's momentum, you know, you got to work your way there, you know?
Yeah. But it starts with that first step.
You got to have and you got to believe. That's the belief part.
Right.
That's the faith part. And I know when I quit public ed, and I was sitting there with my wife, and after she got done being mad at me because I told her I didn't want to be a principal anymore, and the security of our family went away.
Net. Oh my gosh, 401.
That one paycheck that I was getting that didn't even make it to the end of the month, yeah, that's gone right now. So standing there, and you're just like, what do I do with myself? That is a very uncomfortable, you know, position, especially when you're a dad and a husband. But the faith is knowing I've got this thing that's just driving me, that I just know I want to go do. I don't know how I'm going to make money on it. I don't know where it's going to go, but I want to go do this, you know. And
some people would say you're crazy.
My family said I was crazy. I got lots of talks about what I was doing and what am I thinking and all this stuff, you know, because in their mind, being a principal is like almost the top of the ladder. You know, I made it. I made it to the oasis of
the gravy train.
Now, yeah, maybe I can just be a principal for the rest of my life. No, man, I don't. Yeah, I want to do my thing, you know.
Right.
But just, I think that, I don't know. I just loved that moment of my life. Once I was there, super uncomfortable. But then once I started to understand faith. That's really the point of it.
Yeah.
I believe I can do this, and I want to go do this now, and it's going to be successful.
Right.
You know, it's like coming back to Bozeman, you know, but our it's expensive here, you know? So you talk about mindset, like most people, when they talk about Bozeman, it's hard to live there, you know? Look, you got people who are thriving and you got people who aren't, you know, which one you want to be. And I told my wife right away, I was like, we're going to thrive no matter what we do.
Right.
And that's been, you know, but we're thriving, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's amazing that you're putting that passion, that ability, you know, you've got, that's been had the e-brake on for about 40 years. And you're just like, dude, off with the e-brake.
Right.
I'm hitting the nitrous button. Let's go. You know?
Yep.
Hell or high water.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you coming back on the Power Hour podcast here and kind of talking about, you know, really filling potential, right?
Yeah.
And investing into our future. Our kids are our future. Your kids are my future. My kids are your future.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, stay tuned for the next Power Hour podcast. Alden Antonucci and Rusty Bauer.